Okay, so get this for today's deep dive. We are going way outside the typical news feeds and financial reports.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to explore some predictions about potential global upheaval and even a financial crash,
Wow.
all based on the visions of Krzysztof Jackowski.
Krzysztof
He's
Jackowski.
a Polish clairvoyant.
Interesting.
Yeah, our main source material is actually a YouTube video where Jackowski lays out his predictions for the near future.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical Wall Street Journal analysis.
Right.
That's what makes it so fascinating to kind of pick apart.
Exactly. And before we even get into it, I just want to say that we are obviously not presenting this as a guaranteed future.
Of course.
But Jackowski's visions do paint a pretty striking and honestly kind of unnerving picture.
Yeah.
We're talking about assassinations, European borders slamming shut,
Oh, wow.
and even a potential shift back to a way of life that feels a lot like pre-war Europe.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is a lot. So let's just jump right in.
Okay.
He starts off with this prediction of a global news cycle dominated by the assassination of a very important person.
Okay.
He doesn't give us a name, but imagine waking up to that news.
Right.
The impact on global markets and just the sense of uncertainty would be immense.
It would be huge. Yeah. And, historically speaking, assassinations have been triggers for some massive changes on the world stage.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, think about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Right back in 1914.
1914, exactly. That basically lit the fuse for World War I.
Wow.
So the assassination of a major figure today could easily throw global politics into chaos.
Yeah.
And that's without even knowing exactly who the target is.
And adding to that potential chaos, Jackowski then predicts a major terrorist attack in Europe,
Oh, no.
possibly in Germany or Austria.
Okay.
And he sees this leading to Germany closing its borders completely.
Completely.
Yeah, like shutting everything down.
Can you imagine the ripple effect of that?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we're already seeing tensions in Europe with the conflict in Ukraine.
Right.
A terrorist attack on that scale
Yeah.
could easily escalate the situation.
Yeah.
And that's going to impact everything travel, trade, international relations.
Absolutely.
And it's not just political either.
Right.
Think about what that could mean for your next European vacation,
Oh, yeah.
or even just the availability of certain imported goods.
It would change things drastically. And as if political instability and potential terrorism weren't enough, Jackowski also drops a warning about some serious price hikes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, starting as early as April, affecting everyday real essentials.
So this is like on top of everything else.
Yeah, like it's not enough.
Oh, gosh.
This prediction actually does line up with some of the global economic trends that we're seeing right now.
Right.
Inflation is already hitting everyone's wallets.
Mm-hmm.
Supply chain are still recovering from the pandemic disruption.
Of course.
And the conflict in Ukraine continues to impact energy prices. So
Yeah.
whether we're talking about groceries, gas, or housing,
Mhm.
brace yourselves.
Yeah.
Things could get even more expensive.
It's starting to feel like a perfect storm brewing.
It really is, but then Jackowski throws in this really vivid image, a young boy running through fields just to work for a handful of candy.
It's such a powerful image, and it's a little bit unnerving.
It is.
He uses this image to represent a potential return to a level of hardship in Europe not seen since before World War II,
Wow.
possibly around mid-2026.
It's almost like he's saying that we might be heading back to a time when things were much simpler, but also much harder.
Yeah, I mean, would we see a decline in technology, a shift away from consumerism,
Right.
maybe even a greater focus on community and self-sufficiency?
What would that even look like?
Right.
It really makes you think about what aspects of modern life we take for granted and what we might actually be better off without.
Yeah, it's a total mind shift.
It is, but then buckle up,
What now?
because Jackowski hits us with his most startling prediction of all,
Okay.
a deliberate financial crash orchestrated by the United States.
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
I know, right?
He claims that this crash would be a calculated move to devalue existing currencies
Mm-hmm.
and bring in new financial systems that America would control.
So it sounds almost like a conspiracy theory, but given historical economic collapses and the current state of global affairs,
Yeah.
it's not entirely impossible to imagine.
He's essentially saying that the U.S. might try to hit the reset button on the global financial system.
Wow.
Think about the implications. The dollar might no longer be the dominant currency.
Right.
New players like China or even cryptocurrencies could come to the forefront.
Yeah.
This could completely change how we invest, how we trade,
Right.
and even just how we manage our day-to-day finances.
It's a lot to consider.
It is.
And to make things even more interesting, Jackowski connects this potential financial earthquake to former President Trump and President Biden.
Okay, how so?
He seems to view Trump as a catalyst for this change, maybe unintentionally,
Okay.
and Biden as the leader who will try to bring stability during this transition. It's definitely a bold take on the roles these two presidents might play on the global stage.
It really makes you question how much power any individual leader actually has to shape global events.
Right.
Are they truly steering the ship, or are they just reacting to these massive forces that are already in motion?
That is the question, isn't it?
It is a big one.
It's a question that has no easy answers.
No,
But Jackowski's predictions definitely add fuel to the fire when it comes to thinking about the roles these leaders might play.
for sure. And here's where things get really unsettling.
Okay?
He suggests that America orchestrating this financial crash wouldn't be some peaceful transition.
Right.
He sees this as a strategy to weaken rivals and establish a new world order with the U.S. at the helm.
He doesn't go into detail about how the U.S. would pull this off,
Right.
but he implies that new financial systems are being created right now that would give America leverage over other countries.
It makes you wonder, what would this new world order actually look like and who would benefit from it?
Yeah.
It's definitely a bold strategy with some potentially serious consequences.
And to add to the intrigue, he brings up this concept of Bespijsverwoes, which basically translates to statelessness.
Statelessness.
He paints a picture of Europe struggling to find its place in this new world order with a breakdown of national borders,
Wow.
governments, and even identities.
It's a pretty bleak outlook for Europe.
It is.
It makes you wonder if the continent could ever regain its footing as a major global player in this potential new world order.
And it's not just Europe that's facing this uncertain future.
Okay.
Jackowski also predicts more instability in the Middle East,
Okay.
claiming that the U.S. and Israel are on a collision course with Iran.
This aligns with the rising tensions we're already seeing in the region, especially with the U.S. pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal.
Right.
He even suggests that Trump's decisions regarding Ukraine were part of a bigger plan to gain support for an eventual attack on Iran.
That's a pretty controversial take, but it does make you think about the motivations behind U.S. foreign policy and what the true objectives might be.
It's like a geopolitical chess game with incredibly high stakes.
It really is.
Jackowski seems to believe that America's ultimate goal is to dismantle the existing power structures
Right.
and reshape the world according to its own vision.
Wow.
He even describes a scenario where the U.S. offers loans to smaller nations, but in exchange demands control over their resources and policies.
That brings to mind the whole concept of neocolonialism,
Right.
where powerful nations exert their influence over weaker ones, often under the guise of aid or partnerships.
It's a pattern that's been playing out for centuries.
It has.
But Jackowski's predictions suggest it could become even more prevalent in this potential new era of global upheaval.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
He does mention the possibility of a new global currency emerging, potentially backed by the BRICS nations, to challenge the U.S. dollar's dominance.
That's an interesting counterpoint because it suggests that there's still room for different scenarios to unfold, and that the future isn't set in stone.
It really underscores the importance of critical thinking and considering multiple perspectives.
We can't just accept one narrative as absolute truth.
No,
We need to analyze, question, and form our own conclusions.
absolutely, and that's what we're trying to do here today.
Right.
We're not saying that Jackowski's predictions are guaranteed to happen,
Right.
but they offer a valuable framework for understanding the forces at play and the potential challenges that lie ahead.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, the key takeaway is that we're living in a time of profound change.
Yes.
The old rules of the game might not apply anymore.
Yeah,
And the future is more uncertain than ever.
it feels that way.
It does.
But knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
By exploring these possibilities, even the unsettling ones, we can better prepare ourselves for whatever might come next.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll shift gears and look at some of the personal implications of Jackowski's predictions.
Okay.
How could this global upheaval impact your daily life, your finances, and your overall sense of security?
We'll explore those questions and more in part 2, so stay tuned.
Definitely stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Krzysztof Jackowski's predictions. We left off talking about a potential new world order
Yeah?
and major shifts in global power. So let's dig into that a bit further.
It's fascinating how Jackowski seems to see this multipolar world emerging,
Right.
where the U.S., China, and Russia are all kind of vying for dominance.
Yeah.
But he also seems pretty convinced that the U.S. will ultimately come out on top,
Right.
though not without some serious struggles along the way.
And he specifically predicts that the U.S. will use this orchestrated financial crash
Yeah,
as a tool to weaken its rivals and solidify its position at the head of the table.
like hitting the reset button.
It's a pretty bold strategy.
Imagine the U.S. essentially hitting the reset button on the global financial system.
Right.
What would that mean for the dollar?
Yeah.
Would we see other currencies, maybe even cryptocurrencies, stepping in to fill the void?
Right.
It could completely reshape global trade investment, even how we manage our own personal finances.
He even goes as far as to say that new financial systems are already being created as we speak
Oh, wow.
that would give America this leverage over other nations.
It all feels a bit cloak and dagger, doesn't it?
It makes you wonder what these systems might be and
Right.
how they would actually work.
Yeah,
He doesn't give us a blueprint, but it definitely raises more questions than answers.
absolutely. And then there's the whole question of leadership.
Right,
Jackowski seems to believe that Trump inadvertently set these changes in motion,
right.
and that Biden is the one who will try to steer America through this turbulent transition to global dominance.
It's an interesting take on their roles in this grand scheme of things.
But it makes you think,
Yeah.
how much control do individual leaders really have when it comes to shaping global events?
Right.
Are they calling the shots, or are they just responding to forces that are much bigger than them?
It's like trying to captain a ship in the middle of a hurricane. You might have a destination in mind, but the storm dictates where you actually end up.
And in Jackowski's vision, the U.S. isn't exactly aiming for a peaceful transition
Right.
to this new world order.
He suggests there will be instability, conflict, and hardship along the way.
He even hints at the possibility of a major war breaking out,
Oh, wow.
though he doesn't give us any specifics about who would be involved or what the trigger might be.
It's a chilling thought.
Yes,
It's like he's saying that the world as we know it is about to be shapen to its core, and the outcome is far from certain.
even seemingly minor events could have a domino effect,
Right.
leading to unforeseen conflicts and alliances.
And amidst all of this potential chaos, Jackowski paints a pretty bleak picture of Europe's future.
Oh, no.
He sees the continent struggling with economic turmoil,
Yeah.
political divisions, and a loss of faith in traditional institutions.
He even uses this powerful term, Bestbeinswosch,
Right.
which basically means statelessness.
Imagine a Europe where national borders become irrelevant. Governments lose their authority and people's sense of identity is fragmented.
It's a pretty dystopian vision.
It is.
It makes you wonder if Europe could ever recover and reclaim its position as a global power in this new world order.
Right. It raises the question, would Europe be able to adapt and reinvent itself?
Right.
Or would it just become a pawn in this larger geopolitical chess game?
And it's not just Europe that's on shaky ground.
Okay.
Jackowski predicts growing instability in the Middle East,
Okay.
specifically highlighting the possibility of a conflict between the U.S. and Israel on one side and Iran on the other.
We've already seen tensions rising in that region, especially since the U.S. withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah, his predictions about an escalation towards war definitely tap into those anxieties.
He even links Trump's actions in Ukraine to this potential conflict,
Wow.
claiming that his perceived abandonment of the country was part of a strategic move to secure support for a future attack on Iran.
That's a pretty controversial claim, and it would certainly require some deeper analysis. But it does make you wonder about the long-term goals driving U.S. foreign policy in the region.
And Jackowski seems convinced that America's ultimate goal is to dismantle the existing power structures
Right.
and rebuild the world in its own image.
Wow.
He even describes a scenario where the U.S. dangles loans in front of smaller nations
Right.
as a way to gain control over their resources and political decisions.
It's like a modern-day version of colonialism, where economic power is used to exert political influence.
Yeah.
We've seen similar patterns throughout history, and it seems like Jackowski believes those patterns will continue in this new era of global upheaval.
But he doesn't see this as a black and white situation.
Right.
He acknowledges the complexity of global power dynamics and the various interests at play.
Right.
He even suggests that a U.S.-led world order might be necessary to prevent even greater chaos and conflict.
It's a thought-provoking perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
It is.
It challenges us to think critically about the role of global powers and the potential consequences of their actions.
And to his credit, Jackowski doesn't completely rule out other possibilities.
Okay.
He even mentions the potential for a new global currency to emerge, possibly backed by the BRICS nations as a counterweight to the U.S. dollar.
That's an interesting alternative scenario. It suggests that the future isn't predetermined and that there's still room for different outcomes to play out.
Yeah, maybe the BRICS nations could offer a viable alternative to the U.S.-dominated financial system.
Right.
Or perhaps we'll see a more multipolar world where power is more evenly distributed.
It highlights the importance of staying informed, engaging in critical thinking, and being open to multiple perspectives.
Yes, we can't just accept one narrative as the absolute truth.
We need to analyze the information, question assumptions, and form our own conclusions.
That's precisely the point.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly accepting any single prediction, but rather using these ideas as a framework
Right.
to understand the complex forces shaping our world and to contemplate the different paths we might take.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, the key takeaway is this. We're navigating a period of immense change and uncertainty.
Yeah.
The future is far from predictable, and the choices we make today will have a significant impact on the world of tomorrow.
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll shift our focus to the personal implications of Jackowski's predictions.
Sounds good.
We'll explore how this potential global upheaval could affect your daily life, your finances, and your sense of security.
It's time to bring this global picture down to a personal level.
Join us for part 3, where we'll delve into the human side of these predictions and discuss what it all means for you. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Krzysztof Jackowski's predictions. We've explored the potential for global upheaval, financial crashes, and a whole new world order. Now let's bring it home and talk about what all of this could mean for you personally.
Yeah, we've covered these big picture scenarios, but how might these global events actually trickle down and impact your everyday life?
Right.
Jackowski's predictions actually paint a pretty vivid picture of what that might look like.
He describes a world where, just finding basic necessities
Right.
could become a real struggle.
Yeah?
Imagine grocery store shelves being bare, gas prices skyrocketing, and, having to make tough choices between heating your home or putting food on the table.
Yeah, he paints a pretty stark picture of economic hardship, especially in Europe.
Yeah,
Remember that image of the young boy running through fields just for a handful of candy?
yeah.
I mean, that's the level of potential hardship he's talking about.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder that even in the 21st century, our basic survival could be threatened.
It is. It's a very sobering thought.
It is.
It makes you wonder what aspects of your current life you would be willing to let go of,
Right?
and what values you would hold on to if you were faced with those kinds of challenges.
It really challenges us to think about what's truly important.
It does.
Jackowski suggests that this period of upheaval could actually force us to reevaluate our priorities.
Right.
Maybe we'll see a shift away from consumerism and a renewed focus on things like community, family, and self-sufficiency.
It's almost like he's saying we need to rediscover some of the skills and values that were common in past generations,
Yeah,
when people were less reliant on these global systems
right.
and more connected to their local communities.
He doesn't romanticize the past,
Right.
but he suggests that there might be some valuable lessons to be learned from those times.
Yeah.
He sees this potential return to simpler times as a mixed bag,
Right.
full of challenges, but also with the potential for a more resilient and fulfilling way of life.
Okay, so it's definitely a lot to process, but instead of just dwelling on the potential doom and gloom,
Right.
let's talk about what you can actually do to prepare for these possible scenarios.
Okay.
What are some practical steps you can take to increase your resilience and navigate these potential challenges?
One of the most obvious areas to focus on is financial preparedness.
Okay.
Jackowski warns of a potential financial crash that could devalue currencies and disrupt our traditional banking systems.
So it might be wise to think about diversifying your assets and not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Explore alternative currencies, or maybe even learn some basic financial survival skills, like budgeting, bartering, or investing in tangible assets.
Right.
Think about ways to protect yourself if traditional financial systems are no longer reliable.
And then there are your basic needs: food, water, shelters.
Right.
Jackowski's predictions suggest those things could become a lot more difficult to come by.
So having a plan for those things could be crucial.
Yeah.
Think about starting a garden, learning about food preservation techniques, or even connecting with local farmers in your area.
Right.
These are skills that could become incredibly valuable if supply chains are disrupted.
It's all about being proactive and not just waiting for things to happen.
Exactly.
And it's not just about individual preparedness either.
Right.
Jackowski also emphasizes the importance of community.
Yeah, in times of hardship, having a strong network of support can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
So focus on building strong relationships with your neighbors, getting involved in your community, and creating a sense of trust and solidarity.
It's almost like we need to start thinking more electively and less individualistically. We need to be able to rely on each other and work together if we want to weather these potential storms.
And while Jackowski's vision of the future might seem a bit bleak at times,
Right.
it's not without a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
He suggests that this period of upheaval could ultimately lead to positive change, a shift towards a more sustainable, equitable, and interconnected world.
So maybe this isn't just about surviving the storm,
Right.
but about using it as an opportunity to create a better future.
Exactly, and that's the message I hope you take away from this deep dive.
Right.
Knowledge is power. By understanding the potential challenges that lie ahead, we can empower ourselves to make choices that align with our values and build a future we can all believe in.
We've explored Krzysztof Jackowski's predictions in depth, and now we leave you with this final thought. What steps will you take to prepare for the future?
Yeah.
How will you use this knowledge to shape your own destiny and contribute to a more resilient world?
It's up to each of us.
The answers to those questions lie within each of us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.